Under President Obama, because he's so anti-American energy, we have actually had a 40% reduction in development of oil offshore, and we've had a 40% reduction in development of oil on federal lands. This is the exact opposite of what we should be doing. What we should do, and what I will do as your president, is I will authorize development of offshore, as long as it's far enough out that it's not visible and it's not a threat to tourism or to fisheries. And I will authorize the development of federal lands that are appropriate. And think about this. We, the American people, own 86% of Nevada. That's an area 40% the size of Texas. And mining is the second largest employer in Nevada. If the federal government were more willing to open up parts of Nevada, we'd have a lot more jobs. We own 69% of Alaska. Alaska is, in fact, twice the size of Texas. That means we own 1.5 Texases. So you could offer the environmentalist half of Texas, 125,000 square miles. They could take national parks, polar bear areas, walrus areas, glaciers, an area half the size of Texas. That would leave us for development, for looking for oil, for gas, for coal, for minerals, an area literally the size of Texas that's currently undeveloped. So when I suggest to you, with the new technologies, with the new ability to have very sophisticated seismic exploration to target where the reservoirs of oil and gas are, with the ability to go out and have very sophisticated and efficient methods of going down and finding them, we could have an explosion of new energy, new sources, and new capacity. There's no reason we can't set 4 goals. Become energy independent for national security reasons, develop enough new energy here at home that we create well over 1 million jobs in the next few years, high-paying jobs, very useful jobs, jobs which, by the way, increase our manufacturing base, because much of energy production requires manufactured products in order both to drill, to process, to transport. Third, by using federal property and by allowing offshore development on federally controlled waters, we get paid a royalty. One of the leading experts on North Dakota has suggested that we might well have, over the next generation, 18 trillion, not billion, $18 trillion in royalties that we could gather for the federal government with no tax increase. And in fact, to accelerate that, I propose the following tax changes. I propose we go to zero capital gains tax, so hundreds of billions of dollars pour into the United States to enable us to have new investment, new factories, new exploration, new companies. I've suggested a 12.5% corporate tax rate, which will liberate about $700 billion in overseas profits to bring them back home to be reinvested and to allow our companies to compete everywhere in the world. I've also proposed that we abolish the death tax permanently so that we're in a position where family businesses can focus on job creation and on being successful, not on hiding from the IRS. I've also proposed that we have 100% expensing. And what that means is when you invest in new equipment, you'd write it off in 1 year. Now that's really important because it means if we're going to go out and find new oil, we're going to move the oil with pipelines, we could make it very desirable to develop energy in America and to develop manufacturing in America so that the energy companies would be buying from American manufacturers, and you'd once again have rebuilt our machine tool industry and rebuild our industry that supplies goods and services. I was in a company that makes forklifts, Extreme Manufacturing, in Las Vegas, Nevada, and they were looking forward to the Keystone Pipeline because they were building the forklifts in Nevada that were going to be used to build the pipeline. So there are jobs all over the country fitting back into this reemergence. I guarantee you that as your president, on the very first day, I will sign an executive order approving the Keystone Pipeline so that oil can come from Canada through the United States to Houston and Galveston. That way we'll have 30 to 50,000 new jobs building the pipeline, and for the next 50 years, we'll have people working to maintain the pipeline, we'll have people working to process and refine the oil products, and to ship them out of the ports of Galveston and Houston. It is a win-win program. I am dedicated to making sure that the Canadians do not have to have a partnership with China to build a pipeline due west across the Rockies. I want them to have the less expensive, more effective, and frankly, more pro-American pipeline that comes right down to Houston and enables us to make money with our Canadian neighbors in a way that's positive for both countries and that helps increase our national security. So these are very practical steps we can take. A president who is willing to replace the Environmental Protection Agency with a brand new Environmental Solutions Agency dedicated to common sense, to science and technology, to innovation, and to being economically rational. A president dedicated to opening up offshore so that we can develop the maximum amount of American oil and gas right here at home. President willing to use federal lands that were appropriate, not national parks, not areas of great beauty, but we have millions of acres that we can allow to be developed in a way that will be good for America, good for our economy, good for our national security. A deliberate strategy to bring down the price of gasoline to $2.50 a gallon or less so that you can afford to buy the kind of car you want. And remember, once we prove there is no peak oil, once we prove that in fact there's a huge volume of energy out there that we can develop if we're willing to do it, there's no reason to have CAFE standards. CAFE standards were adopted for automobiles as a response to the Arab embargo in the 1970s. But if we're going to produce plenty of energy, let the American people buy the car or truck they want. We don't need this meddlesome Washington bureaucracy and Washington politicians dictating to the rest of us what we should do and how we should live. People, if they go to work and they earn a living and they pay their taxes, when it's their take-home pay, it ought to be their decision. And they ought to have the freedom to drive what they want to, and they ought to have the freedom to enjoy the things they want to enjoy. And they shouldn't be told by some Washington bureaucrat or some Washington politician what they have to do. And frankly, if we eliminate the CAFE standards, all of our auto companies are going to be healthier overnight. The American people replied to earlier bureaucratic meddling by moving from full-size cars when they were outlawed to trucks. So the effect wasn't to have us go to smaller vehicles. It was just to shift us out of cars into trucks. And I think we need to understand the American people really are proud about their right to choose the way they want to live without politicians and bureaucrats telling them what to do. Let me say finally, if we do all this, the amount of money we're going to generate is going to enable us to move towards a balanced budget if we control spending, if we modernize the federal government, if we adopt anti-fraud procedures, if we abolish a couple of departments, if we take the 10th Amendment project that Governor Rick Perry's agreed to head up, and we return power back home to state and local government, those things will enable us to move back towards a balanced budget. I know this can be done because when I was Speaker of the House, I worked with President Bill Clinton, and we passed the 1997 Balanced Budget Act, and out of that came 4 consecutive balanced budgets. We paid off $405 billion in debt. So when I look at the scale of the Obama deficits, the amount of money he's throwing away, the wasteful use of his credit card, I know that we can do better. And I know that if we open up American energy, think about the things that happen simultaneously. We get a lot more jobs. That's people who come off of unemployment. They come off of food stamps. They come off of welfare. They come off of public housing. They come off of Medicaid. All that saves us money. And they go to work taking care of their family and paying taxes. So government revenue goes up, government expenses go down. Second, I know that when we develop this, the companies are going to make more profits. So they're going to pay more tax back to the government. And I know that the royalties we're going to get from federal land and from offshore developments is going to pour in by the billions. And in fact, if the estimates from North Dakota are right, it could literally be pouring in at the rate of $100 billion or more a year of increased royalties without a tax increase. So there are a lot of positive things that can come all simultaneously. And finally, as a national security matter, it allows us to say to the oil developing dictators, whether they're Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Iran, you name it, that we are going to be standing on our own 2 feet, that the United States is not going to bow to anybody, we're not going to be blackmailed by anybody, and as we get to a balanced budget, we're going to start paying down our debt, paying off the Chinese-held bonds, so that we become truly, once again, independent and able to do what we believe in on our terms without having to deal with the kind of pressure you might get into either because somebody's holding on to your oil or because they're holding on to your U.S. Treasury notes. Either one is a form of leverage over us and weakens us. I believe that it's very important that we take advantage of this. But notice what I've outlined for you. Here is a whole new approach. It's positive. It's exciting. It means you'll have more money in your pocket because at $2.50 a gallon, you can figure out for yourself, what does that save you annually? And if you're in a family that has several cars or several trucks, it saves you a lot. If you're an independent trucker, it saves you a whole lot of money. If you live in a town where trucks are bringing your groceries and they're bringing things to your local mall, you're going to save money. Every time you can lower the cost of energy, you make it easier for us to have manufacturing and you lower the cost of living. So it's a win-win environment. You also know that if we do this, we're going to have a lot more jobs. And we need a growing economy with a lot of new jobs because we want to be a country where America works best when Americans are working. We're not a country of food stamps and welfare. We're a country of the work ethic, of a job, of take-home pay, of opening up our own business. And this kind of an energy program will do just that. I know it's different. I know a lot of folks in the establishment will say it's unrealistic. These are the same people who said to President Reagan when he said we could defeat the Soviet Empire, now be reasonable. These are the same people who when President Reagan said, first Governor Reagan as candidate and then President Reagan once he won, he said if we cut taxes we'll create jobs. They said that's voodoo economics. Well, it created 16 million new jobs during his presidency. I came back really applying the same things in 1994 in the contract with America. And people said that's unrealistic. You're not going to win control of the House. It's not possible. Nobody's done it in 40 years. You can't balance the budget. You can't reform welfare. Guess what? Because we had positive ideas that were real, we had the largest one-party increase in American history. 9 million additional votes over 1990 went to the Republican side, 1 million fewer votes on the Democratic side. We won control for the first time in 40 years, and we kept our word. We, in fact, passed welfare reform. 2 out of 3 people went to work or went to school. Incomes went up. We had fewer children in poverty because their parents were working and had a better future. Passed the largest tax cut, the largest capital gains tax cut in history. Unemployment dropped to 4.2%, 11 million new jobs. And the budget, as I said earlier, was balanced for 4 straight years. So I believe if you have courage and faith, if you have the right principles, and you have the right facts, then you can develop the right policies. And even if it scares the Washington establishment, even if the liberals don't like it, even if the New York Times editorial writers say, you can't do this, how can you have all that new energy? How can you let the American people buy the kind of car they want? How can you lower the price of gasoline to $2.50? Well, my answer is, we are Americans, and Americans do what needs to get done. We've had a long history as a people of doing great things together, and I believe we can have an energy future together. And I think with that energy future, we're going to have a better quality of life, a better economy, better national security, and take a big step towards balancing the federal budget. I do need your help. This is a wild campaign. It's been up and down. It's like riding the roller coaster at Space Mountain. And I'd love to have you come to newt.org and sign up and help us. We need all the folks we can get, because if enough Americans come together, we are going to, in fact, create a much better future. So with your help, we will unleash the American people. We'll get government out of the way, and we'll create a much better future. The next time you're at that gas station, when you look at what you're paying, just think to yourself, is it worth my time to help Newt to get that $2.50 a gallon gasoline? I think you're going to decide it sure enough is. I hope you will decide to join in, go to newt.org, my first name, sign up, and together, let's get America back on the right track. Let's get the economy growing again. Let's make sure that our national security is safe, and let's give our children and grandchildren the kind of fabulous country that our parents worked and fought to give us. Thank you very, very much.